Today, Israel says it killed a senior Hezbollah commander, another one, in a strike just outside Beirut in the southern suburbs. It also is saying at the same time, though, that Israel is not seeking a broad regional escalation. But is that not already what is happening here?
Well, basically what they're saying is, while I believe that they're not actively or proactively seeking a broad escalation, because otherwise they would have done it by now, they are also communicating that they're not afraid of one. I mean, they're really cleaning up house. When these are Hezbollah leaders whose names I remember from back from when I handled Hezbollah back at the Treasury Department when I worked in counterterrorist financing. These are operatives and commanders and leaders who were part of the 1983 Marine barracks bombing that killed 241 U.S. servicemen. And so these are that you're talking about, really, they're going in there and they've had it. And they're telling them, we don't want you lobbing missiles at the north of Israel anymore. We want to return our citizens there very safely. And we're going to be tough about it. And we're not afraid to escalate this further. But you can also tell, I don't want to use the word restraint so much as they haven't gone all out just yet. But they are also communicating that they're not afraid to.
Okay, well, I guess it raises the question of what would drive them from being not afraid to do something to just making the decision to do it. Who has lesser incentive here for further escalation? Is it Israel or is it Hezbollah, who we understand of the Iranian proxies is the best arm and potentially the most capable of conducting harmful strikes against Israel?
Well, they might be the most capable of the proxies, but they're not really going to be, they can't compare to Israel if Israel has the help of the United States to intercept Hezbollah missiles into Israel. And Israel is counting on that. So now their defense minister was in Washington this week and told the United States that Israel doesn't believe anymore that diplomacy is going to make Hezbollah stop its military confrontations. Every single day since October 8th, Hezbollah has been lobbing missiles at the north of Israel. About 100,000 Israeli citizens have evacuated the north. And that's important to Israel, not just because those citizens want to return, but because it undermines their territorial integrity of their country if they don't have any presence there. And so they're very afraid that Hezbollah might pursue another October 7th style attack where they go in, there's some kind of invasion where they try to compromise that border. And the spokesperson said as much today, by the way. And so when they said that, they're saying, we don't think diplomacy has worked. It's been 11 months of Amos Hochstein's diplomacy in Lebanon. He has shuttled back and forth between Lebanon and the region and the United States with no results. And so Israel is saying, we think military action is the only way to push them back and to get them to stop doing this. So while Hezbollah really, it would be a significant war. I don't want to pretend it would be easy. And the United States doesn't want Israel to escalate, particularly before an election. At the same time, the U.S. has promised to defend Israel in any kind of escalation, and that means that likely we would try to help intercept missiles.
Well, and of course, all of this comes as the U.S. is still actively seeking a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, although it does feel, and perhaps just based off of the lack of communicated optimism on the part of U.S. officials in recent weeks, Hagar, that it's getting farther away, not closer. Yeah, is that also your understanding?
Absolutely. So this week was the first time I saw, it was very obvious to me that this week, in particular, when the defense minister told the U.S. that they were ready for military action with Hezbollah if needed, that they thought that it might be the only way. And then you saw the attack on Hezbollah operatives carrying these pagers and walkie-talkies. That, to me, signified that Israel, the Netanyahu government, does not believe that a ceasefire is achievable in the near future. And that's for a number of reasons. Part of it is Netanyahu's own demands and political interests. But it's also that Hamas's leader, Yahya Sinwar, has committed publicly, including last week in a letter he sent to Hezbollah, to continue the fight and to continue the anti-Israel, anti-Zionism fight. And so neither side wants a ceasefire. Now, as the explosions of the pagers were happening, Secretary Blinken was in the region trying to come up with a new proposal with Egypt and Qatar. But the problem is, it was just a few days after that President Biden said he didn't believe it was going to happen, or the Biden administration said it wasn't going to happen likely before the election. And when you have that, when you don't believe something like that is coming soon, it also means that your focus on military action is going to be ever more prioritized.
Hagar, I'd like to ask you something else, and it does pertain to the region, but it's more domestic focused, because during a campaign event last night in which she was addressing specifically Jewish people at an anti-Semitism event. Donald Trump had this to say about reinstating a Muslim travel ban. Take a listen.
I will ban refugee resettlement from terror-infested areas like the Gaza Strip, and we will seal our border and bring back the travel ban. Remember the famous travel ban? We didn't take people from certain areas of the world because I didn't want to have people ripping down and burning our shopping centers and killing people. But we're not taking them from infested countries.
Hagar, does this kind of rhetoric or policy suggestion at home actually have an impact on what happens in these areas abroad? This is obviously a conversation we were having around the campus protests, for example, earlier this year, the notion that actually it may, because of expressed support for Hamas or the Palestinian cause, impact what's happening. Does it also have the reverse impact?
Well, so you have a few things happening at the same time, and I'm gonna start off by saying that while I understand the security concerns from a lot of countries all over the world, where you do have criminals and terrorists who actively try to come into our country, it's also very un-American to say to just come out with bans that flat out block certain countries altogether from the opportunity to come here. And you know, so on one hand, I do genuinely believe, and I say this as the daughter of Lebanese immigrants who achieved their American dream. And I believe very deeply that immigration is a key part of our country and our economy and our society. I also believe that the U.S. government has to be as tough as possible and vet people as much as possible to ensure that the people coming here want to come here for the right reasons, that they want to come here to achieve their American dream, to share in American values, to help our economy, to contribute to our economy and society. And they don't all want that, you know, and DHS makes that very clear. But I just don't think a ban helps. And that kind of rhetoric also doesn't help because it only fuels arguments that the U.S. is racist or that the U.S. is going to judge people based on their religion or their ethnicity. And so it's not the right message to make. And I don't think Trump has it right here at all. I do think, though, that there is a fine line, that there's a balance that we can achieve that, by the way, the U.S. achieves pretty well and has under multiple administrations. But we can always do better in ensuring that criminals don't come to our shores.